Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Supergirl, the latest episode of Lucifer, as well as the latest episode of The Gifted. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you don't want to hear what I had to say about the season premiere of Supergirl, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Lucifer and or this week's episode of The Gifted. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the season premiere of Supergirl. A great season premiere. I kind of figured from a little bit of the trailers, and it seems like most of the stuff I've seen from the trailers seems like it was pulled directly from this episode, but it's such an interesting thing of like Kara kind of wanting to give up on being Kara and just being Supergirl, because it's like you see her like swooping around as Supergirl all the time, not doing some of the pleasantries of being the hero, like not even chopping to be like, oh yeah, you're welcome, no problem. It's like just swooping off, going to the next thing, snapping at people. I like the fact is that even like Wynn even compared her to Alex. And then Alex is like, what? I'm not like that. And you know, John be like, well, come on, your unnecessary amount of seriousness is one of the things we love about you. She's like, I'm not like that. I'm not like that. Just because, and it's such an interesting development because it's like for Kara, it's like, it hurts too much to be Kara. It's like, the fact of the matter is Kara Danvers is weak. She's a sad girl who lost her boyfriend. Supergirl doesn't have to worry about that. She can just focus on being a hero, do her job and everything. But it's a situation where it's like you let one side of yourself slip away, then, you know, that side of her, Supergirl, will eventually like lose a step or two anyway. Because the fact of the matter is like that's the beautiful thing, and I think that's what this show does well. I think this show does something that like arguably none of the other even amongst the other DC shows, this show heavily like dives into both sides of her, both Kara and Supergirl. Because like the only other one that really does it is Arrow, and even then that's, I don't know, like I feel like Arrow did it in the beginning, but they really like brought it back like the past 2 seasons, like with him wanting to be mayor and then eventually becoming mayor in season 5. So they really played that up but like this is the first series from very beginning they balance like the Supergirl and like her alter ego, because for her it's not even a balance of like, oh, one is more important than the other. They always act as a balance for her, like they represent the 2 different sides to her. And obviously what they end up telling her is like, you know, Kara Danvers is what's important to them, because for Alex, Supergirl isn't her sister. Her sister is Kara. You know, Kara's the one that's been there for me. You know, John's like, it's Kara that saved me multiple times, just like Alex is like, it's Kara that saved me multiple times, not Supergirl. You know, because when we actually break it down, like Kara is all there is. Supergirl, it's almost arguably you could be like the mask, the persona, whereas Kara is the real her, like arguably. Which I mean, oftentimes you think it's the other way around, that Supergirl is her being herself, but it's like arguably no, like actually Kara kind of is, because Kara has that heart, and it's like yes, it might be seen very human, and that's kind of something interesting about this is the fact that she's trying to bury the human side of herself to the point she just doesn't want to feel things anymore, because it's a lot easier just to be the alien that she is. And because the interesting thing is, so far it seems like it's done with. Like, you know, she dealt with it in this episode. So I was thinking it was going to be an entire season thing, but I mean, I don't know. There might be elements of it, because I mean, obviously she's very heartbroken over the situation. I mean, you even have Lena, because the whole like Morgan situation, Morgan played by Adrian Pastar, that's cool. Which I once again kind of do the acting thing. It's kind of interesting. Obviously, he played Nathan in Heroes, but also the fact is he plays Talbot in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is a Marvel show, and now he's in a DC show. It's kind of interesting. Immediately setting him up as being a major douchebag, which I'm curious, are they going to, it seems like they might be setting him up to be at least one of the antagonists of the season, not necessarily the main antagonist. Season 2's finale kind of set up what I would argue is the main antagonist, but we'll get to dive into that like later on. But for now, it's like he kind of throws it in Lena's face. It's like, oh, you're putting all these millions into reconstructing National City. I literally blanked on it. I was about to call it Star City for a second. That was like Central City. No, that's Arrow and that's the Flash. This is National City. So, nevertheless, it's like, oh, you're trying to make up for the fact is that this is essentially all your fault because you let everyone, the Daxamites in. I was like, right, because she got close to Mon-El's mom. I forgot about that. That's kind of how that, I almost let that slip my mind, that's how it unfolded. And she even blames herself for things happening with Mon-El, because it's like, yeah, because of everything playing out the way it did, because of that, Mon-El ended up leaving, and Kara's like, it's not your fault. That was Supergirl's choice. Which on some level, I guess that's why Kara even, well, and that's what leaves Kara even more conflicted, is because it's like she would make that choice over and over again to do what she did, because that's a choice that she has to make as Supergirl, because she can't let her feelings as Kara Danvers get in the way. And it's just like, she's like, I'm broken, which is like, and it's something Alex kind of says, and it's kind of interesting because you have like Alex being like, it's okay to be broken. It's like, if something happened to Maggie, I would be sad, I would be depressed, I'd be drinking, but it's okay to be broken, because that's the whole thing about love. You know, there's give and take of love. Like, you know, you gain love and you lose love, sadly. That's just kind of how, sadly, that's how things work. But John's also like, you're not broken. And it kind of coincides with what Alex is saying. Like, that's the aspect of just being human. Because you can feel loss means that you truly experience love. You know, I know I'm getting all like gushy about it, but it's like, that's the truth. Like, you know, the fact is that you can feel so much hurt means that it mattered. It meant something. That love, that connection means something, and it meant something, and it continues to mean something. So I don't know. That was just, like I said, it seems like it's all settled because Kara seems like she's okay. I mean, she quit for a little while at the at Catco, but she came back. I'm actually surprised because I mean, it seems like, I mean, because the big focus of the episode was Kara, just her dealing with the aftermath of season 2. You know, so it wasn't like anyone else's story. Like, it's because it's like everyone together, like their love and caring for Kara, and during this troubled time, everyone was trying to give her space, but it was too hard. And especially for Alex, it's like, I want my sister back. You're not acting like yourself. You're not coming to hang out with us. You know, my wedding's coming up soon, which her and Maggie are getting married, which is super cool. Which later in the episode, she's like, we're gonna have like the biggest, gayest wedding ever. I love it. And it was such a sweet moment of just like her being like having hesitations. Initially, I'm like, okay, the reason why she's hesitating obviously is because Kara's not in her, and she doesn't want to go through with the wedding without Kara, which like Kara would still kind of be there, which arguably maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't, because of the whole like being Supergirl 24/7 type of thing. But it was more so like her dad wouldn't be there to walk her down the aisle, and it's just, I don't know, it's something she wouldn't want to do without her. And it's like, well, Maggie's like, well, why didn't you tell me? It's like, well, you got your own family issues. I don't want to stick mine on you. It's like, no, we're in this together. Like, I get to choose who my family is. And, you know, and Alex took that and she kind of did it herself. And she's like asking John, it's like, hey, I want you to walk me down the aisle. And she's like, don't you cry, because if you start crying, I'm going to start crying. And then they're going to know that we cry. It's such a beautiful thing because John has always been kind of like a father figure for them, you know. So, especially because, you know, he always took it upon himself to look after them because of, you know, because they are Jeremiah's kids and what Jeremiah did for him, you know, so he just wanted to repay the offer. So, because it's not just even that, it's also because Alex and Kara have become like his own daughters. So, I don't know, it's just a beautiful thing. We also find out that Kat is now working as press secretary for the president, which is interesting. Which I guess makes sense because obviously last season we found out that they had a connection. They actually went to college together, and then like she found out the president's an alien. It's like, oh my god, like so chill and amazing with it and everything. I love it. And no, I almost let it slip my mind too. It's like, right, Kat found out about Kara at the end of the series, at the end of the season, because she's like, go super. It's like, so she knows, you know. So, except Kara doesn't know that Kat knows, but nevertheless. And it also seems like Snapper's away on sabbatical, which I'm curious to see, will he come back or not? James is still running things. That's definitely going to be interesting, considering the fact going back, it seems like that might be another big part of the season, him trying to balance everything. You know, this is all about Cora balancing, but there's still his aspect of things having to balance too, because for him, he's like, I'm running Catco, sure, but being Guardian is also important to me too. Is what he was trying to talk to Kara. He's like, you can't give up one. Now, to be fair, I will call him out for using that emergency call signal like that. I'll admit, that's a little douchey. Like, she was literally in the middle of something serious, and you were like calling her for that, like for her work and everything, which is like, arguably, yes, she should have turned it in sooner and stuff like, but still, it's like she was in the middle of something, so it's like it's a little douchey, but at the same time, it's like, okay, like you get where James is coming from, because it's like, okay, you're worried about your friend and everything. That's what this was. It was kind of almost like a intervention, essentially. So you get that aspect, but like I said, it's still like, that's kind of like for emergencies only, and you used it like that. So, nevertheless. But what was kind of interesting about them setting up, you know, Morgan as being kind of like a douchebag, I wasn't expecting it to be like, oh yeah, he's like the main douchebag of the episode, because that dude, whose name is aka Bloodsport, is kind of his code name, ends up stealing technology from a Daxamite ship, because basically the military secretly kept one, and he stole the cloaking technology from it and modified it on a submarine. The submarine was blowing up the waterfront where the Girl of Steel statue was being unveiled. I was like, wow, you're causing all that mass destruction because it plays into your favor. Which also, let's talk about the douchebag movie he pulled earlier in the episode where he bought Catco just to give the middle finger to Jimmy because Jimmy's like stood up to him. And it's also because apparently Catco's been running a lot of inflammatory runs of articles and stuff about him. So it's like, oh, you're super biased and blah, 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 blah. So like I said, just big middle finger to them. Which I love that line he gives to Lena, and it's in the trailers. But what I love more is the fact is that Kara's like, yeah, I know you were behind the whole attack on the waterfront. I can't prove it yet, but I will, because you've got all of my attention now. And leave him on like a ship, like a ship that's like shipping off containers and stuff like that. And leaves it there. He's like, you can't leave me here. It's like, yeah. That was so good. I was like, what are you going to do, like pulling him off, like going off like that? Also, the fact is that Lena is now owner of Catco. That's definitely going to be interesting. Which she's like, what, you quit? No, then unquit. Because like, I don't know about running a media business like that. It was like, well, I don't know how to. Well, I mean, you worked with Cat for so long. It's like, come on, how often you get to like work with your best friend? You almost see this look on like Kara's face, being like almost like take it back for her. It's like, oh, like the fact is you call me your bestie. I noticed it. Maybe I was just reading too much in it, but it's almost a look on her face, almost like, huh, you call me your bestie, like that we're best friends. It's like, oh, like I said, outside of like the group, which like I think I brought it up last season as well. It's like that group is her friends, but it's like her work friends too. Her only person outside of work she has is both her best friend is like, it's her as Kara and also her as Supergirl. So, I mean, it's just kind of interesting when you break things down. Really quickly, obviously you have Erica Durance. I wish I did not, or Durance, like I said, I still don't know how to properly pronounce it. I'm just going to say Durance because I always said that. No, I think I flip-flop. Sometimes I say Durance. Nevertheless, obviously, most notably, Lois Lane in Smallville. So, yay! I wish I did not know that, because I'd forgotten for a moment that she was in the trailers, but obviously I saw other things kind of referencing her. But I was like, oh, I wish I had forgotten again. But interestingly enough, she plays Kara's mom. But then at first I was like, wait, what? No, she doesn't. I was like, how? I was like, who is she supposed to be? Oh, she's supposed to be like an aunt or something? I was like, well, we already know her aunt. I was like, is she like a sibling or something? I was like, what is it? And it's like, oh, I saw my mom. I was like, your mom? Oh, right. Because your mom, the whole Kryptonian situation was only on CBS. And it's almost like it's like stuff is referenced, but it's like, let's pretend like bits and pieces of season 1 happened, but don't worry about the details. Because it's like, because you remember the actress who played Astra was also the actress that played her mom, because her mom and her aunt were cousins. So it's like, I didn't even think about that. It didn't even cross my mind, because I was like, oh, that must be her aunt. So it's like, oh, it's her mom. Okay. It's just a little thing, because there's not that much stuff that they brought over from the CW. Like the only things from like season 1 that have purely came over was like Livewire last season. She's like the only real thing. I mean, obviously like the crossover to Flash, like obviously that still applies because that's now part of like Supergirl's part of the Arrowverse and everything. So that's the own thing. But it's just kind of interesting. I mean, I don't mind it, but I feel like, oh, that's a little sad. I guess just the byproduct of like moving to different networks and stuff like that, and just filming locations. I'm sure, like it's kind of similar situation with like the whole situation with Kat that talked about last season. Just I guess it would be a similar circumstance to that, but nevertheless, interesting to see her a part of the main cast now. I mean, at least we're probably going to be seeing her more often. Like I said, everything I've seen from the trailer, like I've only seen the one trailer that came out from Comic-Con, San Diego specifically, because I had to specify that because New York Comic-Con was recently. So, but I have not seen anything beyond that. Like I said, everything I saw was mainly from the first episode. So I am very interested to see where they go. I mean, I'm almost skipping over it. You also have Odette Annabelle in this, which like, I know her. I think the first movie I ever saw her in is a horror movie. I think it's called The Unborn. First movie I ever saw her in. She was in like the final season of House. She popped up pretty frequently in Banshee, at least like the first 3 seasons. So I guess me saying that's kind of spoilers. I mean, I guess it never really said how her story played out, but it played out in a very interesting way, is all I can say. So it's so cool. I had no idea she was going to be in this, and then I saw her name. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" And it's interesting because she was saving her daughter Ruby and she picked up like a huge piece of metal, and she was crushing it with her hands. I was like, "Oh wait, are you going to discover you have some kind of superpowers or something?" And that happened. Plus the fact that she's having those nightmares where it's like Kara's mom turned around in a dream and had like a monstrous face. So I'm thinking this ties into season two's finale. Like, obviously we saw something or someone else leaving Krypton. Immediately my brain was like, oh, are they setting up a Doomsday type of situation in the show? I mean, because Doomsday, because the fact of the matter is we don't know how many of Superman's villains have been established in his universe. Like, we know that the Toyman was that was season 1, right? So he was already kind of a pre-established thing. So I think he was already like one of Clark's nemesis then. But it's like I don't know if Doomsday exists in this universe or not. And that's what I was kind of alluding to. And I think that might be what Odette Annabelle's character might be. That she might actually be like the humanoid form of Doomsday. The only reason why I'm thinking like this is because of my experience with Smallville. Kind of spoilers for Smallville, which it might end up being spoilers for Supergirl. So I do apologize. But in Smallville, they had a similar situation. I can't. Is it Sam Witwer? I always forget their names because he was on Being Human with the other actor named Sam, which I forget his last name too. But essentially, he was like the humanoid form for Doomsday. So I'm thinking maybe that's a similar thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're not even doing the Doomsday thing. Maybe it's something else entirely. I'm very interested because the fact is that she had that dream, it was like a demonic version of like Kara's mom. Makes me think it's like some like flip opposite. Is she like some kind of like negative version of Kara or something like that? Was it like some experiment they used Kara's DNA and ended up creating like an opposite to her or something like that? Kind of like, I mean, I guess arguably you could look at Doomsday as kind of the opposite because Doomsday is pretty much the bringer of death in comparison to Superman, who's like this bright shining light hero. So I'm curious as to what they're going to do with this. I mean, like, it seems like they're definitely setting her up to be like potentially like a main, because like we see like the submarine like explosion from the missiles ended up revealing like a ship buried into like the earth there. So not saying that who was ever in that ship is still there, but maybe it crash landed so long ago that it ended up just becoming a part of it. So maybe it's connected, maybe it's not. We will just have to wait and see. I'm very curious to see where that goes. I mean, like I said, the entire season too, because like I said, I thought this whole like thing with Kara was going to be like the full season. I'm like, oh, Kara, Danvers, and Supergirl. I'm sure going forward it's still going to be like, hey, how still trying to figure it out, you know? So like, because the moment, like I said, because it's interesting because it's like she always like, because it always seems like more hurt comes about because of her as Kara Danvers. So trying to find that balance to find her way to live with the choice that she made, that she would make 1,000 times over, you know? So, and also, what's it like going to be working for your best friend? That's going to be weird and awkward. And also, it's something I've been wondering too. Where is Lena and Kara's relationship going to take them this season? Like, will she find out about her? Will she not? Also, what about Lillian? I mean, she's still out there. Cadmus is still out there. You still got Hank Henshaw, Cyborg Superman. So we will just have to wait and see what like the next episode has in store for us, as well as the rest of the season. And now moving on to this week's episode of Lucifer. Another great episode of Lucifer. Basically, this episode dealt specifically with a stand-up comedian named JD who was tortured and killed. And it turns out it's connected to this dude, another comedian. His name's Bobby. He has this whole show where basically the premise of it is he talks to his imaginary friends. And what I love about this whole case, this situation is obviously Lucifer does his typical thing of like, he's projecting his own circumstances onto this particular case, like he always has. In this particular case, like the Centerman is doing everything that Lucifer does. He's giving out favors, everything that Lucifer would do. He'd help people. Like, it's like, oh, well, what do you desire essentially? And it's like the Centerman's taking his place. He doesn't like that, which in itself, like the fact is when you actually break it down, that might kind of coincide with what I brought up last episode, that basically the Centerman is trying to take Lucifer's place. Like, since Lucifer hasn't been filling that role for a long time, like I said, maybe this has something to do with hell. Maybe it has something to do with the whole shebang, with the whole, like, everything that Lucifer represents in the whole, like, celestial cosmic scale of, like, him being the devil, you know, the power. Maybe there's some power from ruling over hell or something like that. Maybe that is what this is connected to. But nevertheless, what I love most too about this particular case is the fact is that Ella injects herself into the case and everything. She's like, whoa, Chloe, Lucifer, you're going to see Bobby? I mean, I might as well go to kind of check some evidence and stuff like that. They're like, fine, let's go. And the fact of the matter is, even at one point, like when the show is over and everything, you see her in the next scene walking over with a shirt from the TV show. And I love that Lucifer kind of ruined the whole thing by like messing with a puppet which had a gun in it and everything. It was just a whole mess of things. Completely just shitting on the show. And Ella was so heartbroken when she found out that Bobby was he stole jokes and everything, because that's what this whole thing was about, because JD was accusing him of stealing like all his jokes and bits and stuff like that. It's so sad. Because you see her so broken hearted. It's like, you're a thief. And you never see her like that. And it's so interesting. First you see her all fangirlish. I mean, we saw her like that in the premiere when it came to Pierce and everything, but now you see her like this and it's just like, oh, she's so heartbroken. But ultimately, it seems like the one behind the murder case was Sheila, which I'm not too surprised about. It's because just the moment like Bobby confessed about the whole thing, she walked away. Just from the very beginning, which was one of the situations I was like, I kind of had a feeling it was her. It turns out to be the case. Essentially, she ended up killing JD because basically she was a low-tier comedian in the sense, like, you know, everyone's just waiting for their break. It's like, do you know how hard it is to kind of break out of the stand-up world? But the fact of the matter is, Bobby had this show. It doesn't matter if he stole JD's jokes or not. He's like, hell, he's even stole some of mine. But the fact of the matter is, JD got to this good position, and if she was there as well, and JD would have compromised, destroyed everything that she built up. Because even Bobby himself was going to walk away from the whole situation. If JD had come clean about his whole situation, that meant that basically he would be covered, that the whole thing would be scandal, but he'd still get paid a lot. Because if he left before all that stuff, if he just left the show because he doesn't want to do the show anymore from a creative standpoint, it's like, oh, it's beneath him, blah 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 blah, you know, like basically he wouldn't get paid. But if JD outed him, then they're like, oh yeah, I get, reap the benefits of like being protected or something, essentially. Nevertheless, that's why she ultimately killed JD, because ultimately this all spanned from like all these emails and death threats Bobby would get because someone thought he was the one that was making the jokes. Because the show wasn't originally about the whole imaginary friends thing and helping you deal with your issues. It was originally about micro penis. And I love that this episode on multiple occasions has said the word micro penis. I don't think I've ever heard the word micro penis said as much as it was said in the show. I literally already said it 3 times. And it's just like, every time, even Lucifer making jokes, even Chloe's like, I don't want to tell you because I know you're going to make jokes about it, which he did. And then there's a whole thing about like Dan going on undercover, going on stage and everything, which also really quickly, I love the fact is that this is the episode Chloe learned about Dan doing improv. It's like, right, he never did tell you, because that was like Dan's way of compensating for the whole divorce situation last season was like, yeah, he took improv and everything like that. And it's just so interesting because he's like telling Lucifer, I was like, yes, improv is not the same thing as comedy. It's like improv is about yes and, and it's so good. He's like just throwing out just like micro penis. Yeah. Ooh, I got his buddy's got a micro penis. And you have Lucifer turning it on him. It's like, how dare you judge someone? Are you the one that actually has it? He's like, pull down your pants. Let us all see if just putting Dan on the spot, even literally throwing tomatoes at him. I love it. But, even when they finally catch the guy, because the guy comes up, he's like, Lucifer, thank you, man. Defending micro penises, like you're your guy. Because they were literally just saying a second ago, it's like, no one's going to come up here and be like, thank you for what you did. And the guy walks up and literally thanks Lucifer for it. And it's like, oh, well, we won't know if this is a guy for sure, so I'm going to have to pull down your pants. Or he turns to Chloe, it's like, or would you like the honor, detective? I mean, ultimately, like the grand scheme of things, like it's kind of sad that basically when it comes to the whole case in general, it's like, oh yeah, like, Lucifer even talked to her. It's like, oh, so it doesn't matter what was stolen from you. What really matters is the fact of the matter is, as long as you can do it better, that's all that matters. It's not even the fact that, once again, it's not that her jokes got stolen or whatever. She didn't care. The fact is she got this good gig and she was fine with it. It's like, as long as I get to, if someone plays you and they do what you do better, you can't be mad. Hate the player, not the game, essentially, type of thing, I guess. Or in this case, maybe hate the game, not the player, whichever the case may be in this particular situation. So, which it seems like that's something Lucifer kind of walks away from this episode, because it's kind of like, because obviously he held, like, this whole thing was because he held so much contempt for the sinner man for all he does. It's like, you're stealing my shtick. This is my thing. interesting development I didn't see coming was the whole Pierce's situation, because he ended up asking Dan, it's like, yeah, give me all the information you have on Lucifer. I know the moment he started working with Chloe, you dug up all this information. It's like, what? No idea. Yes. Yeah, I did. And he uses that, and basically I was like, okay, you're breaking into this place. The moment he's like, oh, I know the truth about you, I was like, it's not about the whole you being the devil thing, it's something else. But it's like, no, apparently he has a connection to the Sinnerman, because the entire time Chloe's been blowing Lucifer off, because it's like the Sinnerman is kind of like the go-to boogeyman, I guess, in the criminal world in general, not just here in Los Angeles, but in general, because it also seems like he's connected to Chicago. Isn't that Chicago where Pierce is originally from before he transferred there? I think so. I'm completely blanking right now. I do apologize. But Chloe doesn't believe him, because let's not forget, last episode Chloe stopped believing Lucifer because she's like, oh, he's just being over dramatic. Because once again, she still thinks this is all some play act, much like Linda, until like he showed her the truth, which he wanted to show her the truth last episode, but can't because of this whole wing situation, his angel side coming back and everything. Which now Chloe's a lot less likely to believe him and everything, so it kind of puts that little stamper on there. Where they stand, because she thinks he was making a fool out of her. It's like, oh, I thought you were going to open up, but you didn't. And now just kind of like 2 steps forward, like 5 steps back, essentially. So, but Pierce is basically warning Lucifer, don't ask too many questions. Because the fact of the matter is, like, he apparently lost someone that was very close to him, and he doesn't want the same thing to happen to Lucifer, even if it's someone like Lucifer, which he's like, I'm not worried about you being the center man, because you're an idiot, you're rash, you're not cool, calm, and collected, and as smart as the center man is, which obviously Lucifer took offense to. But it seems like going forward, they will be working together. Because I was curious to see what they were going to do with Pierce's character this season. Like, what was he supposed to represent? Is he supposed to be like, oh, some secret, like, celestial being or something like that? Which there's always a possibility that that's the case. I mean, I was also thinking, like, not unless he's secretly the Sinnerman running this whole thing. It's like, I mean, the Sinnerman just happens to pop into town, like, roughly around the time you pop into town. It's like, that's a little... I don't know, like, it's just a little timely, because Lucifer was away when... Well, because it was all... I was about to say Lucifer was away when it happened. It's like, no, Lucifer came back right when Pierce started. So I forgot. So there's always a possibility for that. This might be the long run of like, oh, making it seem like it's someone else. But there's always going to be part of my mind that thinks it's him. But that might just be the purpose of this season, them being like allies in this regard. Because it's like, yeah, let's keep this to ourselves, not involve Chloe. But it's like, Lucifer wants to, because like that's his partner, is like the detective. But it's like, no, if she gets involved, Trixie might get caught up in it. So obviously we'll get to learn more about Pierce's whole situation in this regard. I'd be very much interested to learn about like his story about where this all happened, like what exactly happened. Obviously it seems like he might have been getting too close or something like that, because to the point even Pierce is like, don't even bring it up at the precinct. Like, you ask too many questions there too, is going to turn into a bad situation, to the point he ends up handing a suspect to Lucifer to see if Lucifer can get anything from him, which Lucifer can't, because the guy's like, yeah, I killed that Sam dude because he was messing with my girl, and it's like, nobody touches my girl, and so he ended up killing him. So it seems like it's just out of a jealousy type of situation that he did it, but it's like, to do it like that is kind of like, and on display like that, there's got to be more to it. And even Lucifer is kind of like, not unless the Sinnerman does something. Like, once again, it's like, with a name like that, it doesn't seem like that's just some like run-of-the-mill gangster or crime boss. It seems like this person is most likely something supernatural, like whether it's like some top tier celestial thing or not. Maybe this person is tapping into some celestial powers. Maybe they have someone on their side that's a celestial being, or whatever the case may be. Like I said, because that's something I'd love to see more about Lucifer, because it's like, Lucifer brought it up last episode, like, oh, what if so-and-so is a changeling or something like that? It turned out to be the case, but it's like, in this, he was wondering if Sam was like a changeling or something to be able to do what he did. But it's like, that's something I was curious about too. Like, will we get to see more of like the other things that exist in the Lucifer universe? Which, like I said, I know I'm aware of other things besides like gods, angels, and demons. There's obviously changelings and things kind of working that middle realm of other supernatural things. So I'd be curious to see if there's any more like that going forward. The only other demon we've had any experience with is Mazikeen. So I also saw a name that popped up in the credits, where they list all the actors and stuff like that. I saw a name. I won't say it because that didn't turn out to be anything. But part of me is like, wait, is that kind of a spoilers that character is going to be in this season or something like that? I don't know. I saw a name that I was like, wow, that looked for me. That was not look for me, definitely for me. I don't know whether that was a mess up or, once again, kind of spoiling certain things. But that was just kind of definitely interesting when I saw that. And in certain regards, it's kind of like, well, I mean, should I mention it? I'll go ahead and say it. Like, Trisha Helfer's name popped up. It's the actress who played Charlotte, Lucifer's mom. Well, the fact of the matter is Charlotte's still a thing. Like, obviously, she's not Lucifer's mom anymore, but she's still Charlotte. So there might be a possibility, little small things of her popping up or something like that. I just happened to see her name. Like I said, I don't know whether that was a mess up or what. But like I was saying, like, it seems like maybe this Cinnamon might have some connection to be able to make people do things. Maybe that's what this all. Which we're going back to once again. Why Lucifer's wings? Why is this happening? Is this the Cinnamon? Is it someone else? Sam makes it seem like it is the Cinnamon. So, like I said, the only thing I can think of is like it's because Lucifer loses his devilhood. Maybe this guy gains it back. Like maybe that devilishness is there, but it just disappears. Like it's out there in the ether waiting to be consumed. Just Lucifer has to be turned back into an angel first, which is kind of an interesting thing. It didn't correlate in my head. Maybe I don't think I brought it up last week's episode in the premiere, but the fact of the matter is Lucifer still has certain aspects of his powers, which the whole like people's desires. So like he lost his devil face. So either it's saying like his power to like people speak their desires was always a power he always had, even as an angel, or they're trying to say that like that's still part of his devilhood that's there. Which is also begs the question too is, does Chloe still affect him the same way? Because his devil face is gone anyway. Like it doesn't change the fact that he's still devilish. Like I said, like is that slowly being eaten away? Is it still there? Will his powers disappear? Does that mean if he goes back to being an angel, does that mean that Chloe will no longer have an effect on him? Like what? I mean, could Chloe actually being whatever she is, like, you know, whatever circumstances God went about making her to put her in Lucifer's like path in life, then it's like, is that something we're going to learn about this season too? Like more about her like respective situation, or like what role she is supposed to play in Lucifer. Like I said, I brought this up last season, but I think it's like some grand scheme way of like putting Lucifer on the right path. You know, someone to kind of help, kind of keep him in balance, like kind of almost a yin yang situation. He represents the yang, she represents the yin type of thing. I don't know. We just have to wait and see on that front. And then another big thing in this episode is Linda herself, because it seems like obviously they're alluding to it the entire episode, because Linda is kind of helping everyone else. You know, Lucifer and Amenadel with their own respective situations. Like obviously Lucifer struggling with this whole wing situation, trying to figure things out, and you also have like Amenadel trying to figure it out too, because he's still on the idea that, oh, this is all some big test, that he's being tested by their dad. Because like Linda looks at the whole situation because she sees the wings, because in her mind she's like, okay, like cut off the wings, they just disappear or something, like magic. And it's like the fact is they're there and they're bloody and their skin attacked. It makes it a lot more visceral and real, because to her she's like, that's kind of sad, because like that means Lucifer's like having to like self-inflict pain upon himself, like when every time he cuts them out. It's not just a poof, they're going. It's like he cuts into himself to remove those. So, I mean, no surprise, because, I mean, as we know in the past, like, Chloe's seen his back before, and, like, you see the big scar imprints from where his wings were. But the whole situation is kind of messed up, because Amenadel is there literally throwing away the things that he wants most. It's, like, right there in front of him just to spite him, essentially. So Linda's kind of wondering, like, is this really a test of from your dad? And he's like, yeah, I mean, like, cause like for Amenadel, he has nothing else to go on. All he has is that faith. And it still wavers a little bit, because even he, you know, this is too much. It's like he wants his powers, he wants his wings, he wants to be restored to being the angel. And now he has his brother who is legitimately kind of like the black sheep of the family, who is, in certain regards, the favorite of the family, even though Amenadel is supposed to be the favorite and everything. So there's that whole, like, brotherly aspect of, like, I'm supposed, you know, he brought it up last episode, like, I kind of feel bad. The fact is, I've kept my ego, that to the point, Lucifer, you couldn't come to me, tell me about your wings and stuff like that, because you were worried about how I would react and everything. Because Amenadel thinks, like, you know, like, Lucifer doesn't care or bother. Like, you know, like, I think Lucifer does care, like, knowing that it would affect Amenadel, because that's why he didn't say anything. But now Amenadel knows and found out. So I was also completely skipped over the fact that the whole beginning thing, like, the way things were kind of set up, I was like, oh, is this supposed to be like a flashback or something like that? And he grew his wings when he was that lady, which I guess kind of puts on the term of, like, kind of shows you where him and Chloe are at. Which, once again, Chloe's still not dating anyone, so I'm curious about that front. But the fact of the matter is, I guess Lucifer kind of put it all on hold, because he knows, like, he's not in a position to really make things work out with her. So at least for now, things have to stay the way they are until he probably fixes himself and get his devil face back, and then he can finally admit to Chloe. Or maybe he just feels like, I mean, really hasn't been dived into, but whether or not, like, that's completely over, that there's no chance of that, you know? But he showed his wings off, and the lady's like, "Oh my god, keep them on! I like, I can maybe get behind this cosplay thing." She's like, "I can be the devil and everything." He's like, "I'm not ready to have sex with myself, not yet." But going back to what I was saying is, Linda's like, "Oh yeah, well, what if?" Essentially alluding to the fact is, what if Lucifer is the test? And it's like, yeah, it's been in front of me this entire time. Everything that's ever happened with Lucifer has been something that kind of test Amenadon. It's like, well, Lucifer himself might be the test. Once again, it's a situation where it seems like Amenadon might be grasping at straws, whatever it means, holding on to any hope that he can, like this old talk with Ella last episode kind of inspired him to kind of just like, no, there's some grand plan. Dad isn't always so clear on his plans, but the fact of the matter is that's why a test is as hard as it is, because it wouldn't be much of a test if it wasn't hard, so. But going back to what I was about to say, like at the beginning, what started this all was about Linda. Because Linda is like, yeah, I'm trained with dealing with other people's traumas and stuff like that. Which, in a way, Linda's kind of projecting too. Because like she's back at work and everything, but she's still hurt from what happened with Charlotte. But it's still like she's trying to compensate for it as much as they are. They're both trying to find their own means, like Lucifer and Amenadel trying to deal with their own issues about like trying to find their own way of dealing with their respective situations, and Linda's doing hers by diving into work and stuff like that, helping out Lucifer and Amenadel. I think will kind of alleviate some of that. Essentially like you forget about your pain if you keep yourself busy, essentially. So it seems like that's what she's doing. So it's kind of interesting that those three characters' stories are kind of reflective of one another, in their own regard. So. But the episode ended with Lucifer being like, hey, I'm back in business. I'm back to, essentially handing out favors like he has always. So I'm curious to see what that means going forward, because this is going to put him in direct competition with the Centerman, which might draw too much attention from the Centerman, which I'm curious to see what Pierce has to say about all of this. Because the thing is that now that I thought, I completely forgot the fact is Lucifer hasn't done this for a very, very long time. Like since like he started hanging around Chloe, he stopped doing that. God, has he done that since season 1? I mean, I guess technically the whole Candy situation last season, I guess arguably that could be the similar. I don't count that. That's something else entirely, because that was more so like helping her out, but also like her helping him out. So I'm like, I don't know, like if that would count or not. Like full on doing favors for people and stuff like that as Lucifer. I feel like he hasn't done that since like the very, very beginning of the series. And even in the first season, I don't remember if he actually did it much. It seems like, because we kind of got introduced to it at the beginning and that was about it. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see more on that, like what he does going forward about that whole situation. Because I think there's a part of Lucifer that hasn't quite thought about the aspect of like, because he's seen like the ramification people that he care about has to suffer, because he saw that with Linda last season and still this season. And I think it's not going to be until something really happens that he starts thinking about Chloe again, because things happened last season because of, part of him was thinking like, oh, this was some grand punishment for the fact is that he didn't turn his mother over. No, I think if I remember correctly, that was all Uriel. If I remember correctly, never mind. That it was like Uriel pulling all those strings. So, but still, that was kind of an outside thing. So it's not like a cosmic thing to a certain degree. So, but maybe it won't be until like something ends up happening to Chloe that it really sinks into like, I need to be careful. I need to be smarter about all this, because the detective will get hurt and everything. So. And not just her, there's so many people in his life that he cares about. Maze might be hurt, Amenadel, Linda might be hurt more, Ella, even though he wouldn't want to admit it, Dan, Trixie, and Chloe. They're all, once again, he wouldn't admit it, but they're all very important to him. They are the centerfold of his world, essentially. So, like I said, great episode, and I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of The Gifted. Another great episode. In this episode, we dealt mainly the whole situation was revolving around Clarice, and the fact is that she's kind of subconsciously opening up all these portals. The interesting thing though is it kept opening on to one specific area, which John asked her about it later on, but she's like, oh, I don't know, remember. Which, I mean, maybe there's truth to that, because she was kind of in like an unconscious state. She doesn't know exactly where it was anyway. She wasn't really aware of what place she was opening up to, so maybe if she saw it, she'd recognize the significance. But obviously from the beginning, I was like, yeah, it's got to have some kind of significance for her, for it to be for her to be opening a portal to it, because we did learn a little bit about her in this regard of like why she got arrested in the first place. Apparently she was stealing food, but the fact of the matter is she doesn't look quite normal. Like, the fact of the matter is, if you don't really look human, it's really hard to kind of go into the workforce, because the workforce doesn't favor upon, mutants. Because basically it's setting everything up to be like, the society does not favor mutants, no matter what the circumstances may be. There's a whole situation in a hospital. The guy patched Marco up and everything, and then immediately called the cops afterwards. To be fair, in that respective situation, it was almost like, well, he looked at the marks on Caitlyn's face as kind of like, well, he must be abusing her or something. It's like, oh, yeah, some people get with mutants, think it's going to be exciting, but things kind of, they like almost like saying basically that mutants are more inclined to be prone to violence, essentially, which is like, where did you pull that from? That's essentially what he was alluding to. So I don't know whether it was in that whole situation. I guess in his mind, it's like, no, Caitlyn's lying. Like, there's obviously something going on here. She's just, she's a battered girlfriend, doesn't want to say anything. Or whether it was just purely like, nah, he's a mutant. The fact of the matter is, because, Marco has said, like, oh, he stepped on the ladder and why he got the wound. But it's like, maybe he could immediately tell. It's like, no, even without beside the whole Caitlyn situation, maybe it's like, yeah, that's a bullet wound. So, I mean, I think they can typically tell that. Which kind of on that subject of Marcos, too. Like, I brought it up last episode about how the fact of the matter is, it seems like the insides of his body is light. I'd really like to learn the whole like biology of how he works, because the way he described it to Caitlyn, he's like, watch out. She's like, I've seen blood before. He's like, not like mine. And it's so interesting because when he was grabbing his hand, if you look, there's actual light blood all over his hands like that. That was so interesting to me. So that's why I'm going like on his insides. Is every aspect of him light, or is it just his like blood system, like, are his organs like that? What is it like on the inside of Marco's underneath, like essentially his flesh? Like, what is he just pure light all the way through, or is it just only certain aspects of him, like I was saying, like his blood or whatever? That'd be kind of, it's just something I'd like to kind of find out more, because that's even more of an interesting aspect to it, because it's not just like, oh, there's light inside him. There's light inside him, and he bleeds light. His blood is literally like, so maybe I guess that could arguably be how his power, well, I was about to say maybe on some level that's how his power works, that maybe like he opened like a little hole in his hand opens and he shoots out. I don't know, like that's just my whole thought process about it. I'd be kind of, they probably won't dive too deeply into it, but it's kind of interesting, because I mean, we pretty much don't know anything about anyone's respective family situation, because Marcos kind of dives into his in this episode, being like his parents abandoned him. The moment his powers developed at 13, his parents kicked him out. So for him, Lorna's the only family he's ever really known. She's the only person that really, first accepted him for him. So that's why he's so, like, she's the only family he has out there in the world. So that's why he's trying so hard to get to her, because it also turns into that whole situation of Marcos bringing up a good point, like, yeah, you and your husband are doing all this. That's fine and dandy, but the fact of the matter is, the only reason why you're standing up taking this fight for mutants is because you're kids. If the whole gymnasium situation was not your kids, your husband would be doing his job, you'd be going about your own life too. Because they kind of allude to that at the beginning of the episode, because it kind of goes like a year ago that a bowling alley, this girl, like, it's kind of her powers is she's a little jittery and stuff like that. Like her body's moving like really fast and it's jittery, and she kind of looks like that kind of fuzzy layer when you're trying to like blur somebody's face or something like that. It looks like that with her entire body. Some douchebags are making fun of her and stuff like that. Her dad's getting all into arms, and her power goes off and she causes a little problem. No one's hurt, just a little property damage. But basically Reed walks over and is like, hey, you should get your daughter out of here before there's more problems. Like, I'm prosecuting and everything. It's like, you do this for her, and she leaves. But Lauren, it hits her hard, because it's like, they didn't do anything wrong. Those people were being douchebags, which even Reed agreed. They're being dicks, but it's like, you don't want to be in this situation, because the fact of the matter is, you're this is your little girl. This will turn into a hell of a problem. So just walk away. But Lauren's like, why did they have to walk away? It's a circumstance that I think it's supposed to represent one of those situations of like, she could have came out to her parents at any point in time that she was a mutant, but she didn't want to, because it's like an incident like that. It's like, because I think legitimately on some level she was scared, like, would her dad accept her? And that's something you have to worry about in this universe as we go back with Marco's whole situation of being abandoned by his family because, oh, he's a mutant, get away from us, you mutant freak. Because there's also been alluded to a incident in particular called July 15th that Agent Turner mentions to Reed about. Basically, his daughter Grace died in, and that's kind of what, like, this whole mutant thing is kind of personal to him too. So it's like, he's kind of got skin in the game, much like Reed does. Reed has his children for Agent Turner, it seems like this is all personal, because it's like, I don't know whether it was a good mutant or a bad mutant that killed my daughter, but the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. So that's kind of why he's kind of as aggressive as he is. So like I said, got his own personal stakes in it. So I'm very curious to learn more about that July 15th incident. I'm sure it's most likely something allocated just to this show, because like I said, once again, I don't know where the grand scheme of things are. Like, I'm sure they're going to keep, like I said, the timeline has been very vague so far, so I'm sure they're going to keep it that way. It's like, yeah, it takes place somewhere between the X-Men movies, between Legion and the X-Men movies. This takes place somewhere in between. Obviously, it's more modern day, but even then, you take Logan, for example. Logan, like, it seems very modern, but that's taking, like, place distant in the future. So it's like, and they never exactly tell you what time period. So it's like, I don't know, it makes you wonder, like, because the fact is, because they said July 15th, but it's like, was that like July 15th of this year, years ago? Like, I mean, it seems like it might be years ago for things to kind of be where they are now, where there's this huge crackdown. Because I feel like even in the X-Men movies, there was like, I don't remember things being this bad for mutants in that regard. Like, yes, the government got involved and stuff like that. But, because truth be told, this show is our only time ever really getting to see the day-to-day basis. Like, outside of this, the only X-Men content that I'm familiar with is, like, X-Men cartoons. But it's been years since I've seen any, whether it's, like, the 90s, or like there was the kind of rebooted Evolution, or like there was Wolverine and X-Men. Those are just on the bigger scale of the X-Men side of things. It's not on like the day-to-day life of just mutants in general. Once again, this is also set in a time where it's like, is the Brotherhood still alive? I don't know. Is the X-Men still alive? I don't know. So that's another layer to kind of be, mutants are kind of left high and dry in this whole regard. I mean, we did find out in the series premiere that, last episode, that Marco says like, this is just kind of one cell. There's like this whole mutant underground is a worldwide thing, but this, like, Marco's group is just one small cell. So there's still that whole angle of like the greater organization itself. I'd like to see them kind of interact with them, or like see what they're up to. Because another thing that kind of went down in this episode, I'm surprised it didn't turn to this. I mean, it might take that route in the future. It's the fact of the matter is that Marcos didn't receive any blame this episode. Like I said, there's always a possibility, because technically everything kind of unraveling the way it did is kind of his fault because of his need to go find Lorna. Basically, he was so quick to make this deal with Reed and this whole situation. So it's give and take. He kind of made this decision on his own without making a decision with others. But once again, we go back to why he's doing it, because Lorna is so important to him. And then, but like I said, everything worked out. Clarice is okay and everything, but it's still, I'm surprised nothing like it. Like, because I was so certain that's like, oh, this is gonna be a situation where someone kind of bashes him a little bit, and it's like, oh, you can no longer lead his team. I was like, okay, what they're gonna do is like, someone was gonna push for someone like John to take the lead or something. That's what I thought was going to happen. Like, the lady in particular was kind of like, yeah, we need to just get rid of Clarice. Like, not in the sense of like kill her or anything, but just like get her out of here, because she's opening up all those portals and everything, because she got knocked unconscious and everything, which is kind of interesting, because I feel like you see her power. Like, I think in that state of like just her body going a little crazy, you actually get to see kind of almost a full extent of her power, because the fact of the matter is she was opening up portals all over the place, more than one at a time. One was closing, another one's open, but even while this one's open, there's like two more already open. So it's like you're kind of seeing just what she's fully capable of. So I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting thing you can kind of pull away from this whole like, messed up situation. But this whole situation was also a big learning experience for Caitlin in particular, because it's like knowing what it's like, because hearing Marco's story, she's like, how could you give up on your child? You're their child. Like, how could your parents do that? And she's like, well, you haven't given up on your kids, so that says a lot, And for her, she's like, I'm here for you guys, and basically like together we're going to save your daddy. Not even just their dad, not just Reed, but also like everyone. Which even Andy's like, how can you be so certain about that? She's like, just trust me. Together, like, we're in this fight with them too. We're going to not just help your dad, we're going to help everyone. Kind of referencing, now that she understands like why Lorna's so important to Marco. So we also, interestingly enough, learned more about John too, like, because like last episode in the series premiere, I kind of referenced the fact is it seems like his power is connected to his senses, because in this episode he taps into his hearing and he's able to hear the radio of like the cops on the other side of the portal. And then there's like the fact is he's super strong to the point like Marco says like, yeah, he's bulletproof, because I thought so, because it's like when the portal opened the first time and that part of that truck got slashed and came slide in, like he pushed Andy and Lauren out of the way, and then it seemed like the truck hit him, and he just kind of like, ugh. I was like, wait, did that? I was like, whoa, like, and it seems like because he's just ridiculously strong, because he grabbed a cop, knocked him against the ceiling, and then pushed him back through the portal. So it's like he's stupidly strong. The question is it like a situation of like his mutant ability is affected that all his senses are enhanced? Because last episode I kind of alluded to it. Is it like kind of like tapping into like almost animalistic abilities where it's like, oh, he's got the strength of a gorilla, the sight of a hawk, something like that. That's what I'm curious about. Is it like a animal representation of his senses, or is it just his senses in general are enhanced, or is it just like his senses as well as his body, like all aspects of his body are enhanced? I'm curious to kind of learn more about his ability. They also introduced a mutant that kind of acts as like a safety guard for the facility, being like, yeah, he basically instills fear on anyone, which is kind of interesting timing considering the whole like, I won't dive into it. It's just kind of interesting. But that was just kind of an interesting ability, because even like, immediately it strikes you and you just don't know what. It seems that Marco seems like he might be immune to it to a certain degree, because the only one that was really freaking out was Caitlin, but maybe he's built up a tolerance to it, or maybe it does only work on regular people. Maybe some other mutants kind of have like, not necessarily an immunity, maybe it's just like it has a much lower effect on them or something. I don't know. Also, like, I'm skipping over, but you gotta give mad props to Lauren for doing what she did this episode, using her power to kind of push those portals closed. Like, that's some impressive shit, dude. It's like you're literally using the air and kind of solidifying it and closing a teleportation portal. It's like, dude, that's pretty impressive, because everyone's like, yo, that's pretty awesome what you did. So, and she did it multiple times, so she could, there's only so much she could do, so. And then there's the other side of things with the whole Agent Turner situation, bringing in Reed's mom, played by Sharon Glass. She's been in so many different shows. I know Queer as Folk is one, but like I think but prior to this, I think the last thing she did was she played Michael's mom on Burn Notice. So I was like, that's so cool. But yeah. Basically Agent Turner trying to force Reed's hand by labeling him as a terrorist. He's assisting a terroristic group. It's like, oh, do you even know about the woman Lorna, what all the stuff she's done, blah 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 blah. Like, oh, we're gonna bring your mom in, we're questioning her, she's an accessory to all of this too, just because she's family and everything. Which Reed immediately sees through. He's like, the reason why you're acting like this, what you're pushing so hard, is because you need a win, essentially, because he's lost multiple times. He lost all those Sentinels that got destroyed last episode by Andy, plus all the mutants, like 6 mutants got away. So it's like he needs a win. So basically he's brokering a deal with Reed to go like, hey, okay, you and your family off limits, but I get the mutant underground, which Reed seems like he's going along with it. Question is he completely going along with it, or is he just playing along long enough to figure a way out of this? Because what I'm thinking is it's going to be a situation of like, okay, we're going to help you get away. We're going to fake it like you escaped or something, or put him in a situation where maybe he ends up escaping with the other mutants, some other mutants that end up getting away. And it's like, oh, this is all some play to get him back to the mutant underground so he can help bring them in, which I think ultimately he will, just because it's like, if it means taking them down, it means saving his family. So, because at the end of the day, all he cares about is family, but that's going to put him in a sour position with his daughter, because like, you have Lauren kind of being the most, because she's had years to process this whole thing. Like, Andy's still in the middle of processing, but Lauren's come to terms. Like we found out last episode, she's known about having her mutant abilities for the past 3 years. So I get the feeling it's going to be a situation like that, where it's like he ultimately does like betray them, but it's like, it was all for your sake, and then everyone gets super pissed. Even Caitlin, because Caitlin's kind of come around too. So he'd be the only one that's like, no, we can't do this. Why did you do that, Dad? So that's where I'm thinking that situation could go, but could be completely wrong. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front. Another thing too is there is a scientist, and that actor, I know him, I don't know his name. I see him in stuff all the time, but the actor who's kind of like, oh yeah, get the agent in charge of this, because basically he brings up, oh yeah, like there's a file on, Lauren and Andy, because they're sibling mutants, and there's some situation that went down, what was it, in some situation in Rio that looked like there's like a destroyed building and everything. And it seems like it was a situation from the 60s or whatever that kind of referenced like, I guess like 2 sibling mutants kind of causing mayhem, and I'm guessing that's what they're setting this whole situation to be up to. Like, the fact of the matter is, if Lauren and Andy get too much control over their power, just how devastating they could be. I think that's what that's kind of alluding to. It seems like this guy wants to get them just to kind of experiment on them, because it's like, because I mean, I don't know, like, because once again, not that familiar with X-Men. I'm probably gonna have to state that every episode, but not just X-Men, but mutants in general. There are very few quote unquote mutants siblings that I'm aware of, because there's a whole, I always thought, like, I was going to use the whole Wolverine to Sabretooth situation, but I'm always confused with that, because they're not actually brothers, are they? Well, no, they're not. Now I'm sitting here thinking about, I literally can't name a single set of siblings that are mutants and are, I mean, the only one I can think of is Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, but that's kind of been pulled back, that they're not mutants anymore in certain continuities. It's like, I think they're now classified as Inhumans, I think. Maybe, because it's like I was recently hearing stuff like, oh yeah, Magneto, like I was hearing something that in certain comic books they kind of pulled it back, being like, yeah, that's not actually Magneto's kids anymore. So I don't know where that stands. So they're the closest thing, but I don't know whether that like has a big impact. Like, I guess like the chances of you having two kids and them both being mutants, I guess that means something, like the mutant gene inside of them is super powerful, which goes back to why I'm like, why are her parents, like I said, I still want to understand, like, the mutant gene is hereditary. So it's like, wouldn't that mean their parents are, once again, not unless they're adopted, which has kind of been my thought process the entire time. But once again, we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that. And finally, the other big thing that happened in this episode was Lorna. Things in prison in that facility aren't good. She has a collar on, so anytime she uses her powers, she gets, shocked for it. And, prison life just ain't good for mutants in general, because even if it's on the inside and you're around despicable people, even they kind of like, oh god, mutants, disgusting type of thing. There's that lady who's kind of running things. It's like, oh, you're a mutant. Well, you work for me. You have powers on the outside, but I'm the one with power in here. But Lorna kind of being a smart ass, kind of like sits, is kind of sarcastic and just walks away and proceeds to get beat up. And I'm like, oh god, this is rough. Even the lady's like, oh, I heard you're pregnant, which is like, how did you find? Well, she's probably like top like person in the prison, so it's kind of like, yeah, like she knows how to get information from the guards and everything. And it's like, oh, let's see if that baby girl's alive. I was like, don't. Oh, and she starts kicking her. I was like, God, that's super rough. And then you have Lorna using her powers a little bit, pushing past the pain of the electricity and just like using the table on her, still proceeding to get beat up. And then you have her kind of getting locked up, so in solitary. So that sucks. Because legitimately Lorna is on her own in this regard. She did meet that other lady in prison who has like pure white skin, but she doesn't want to have anything to do with Lorna, because it's like, yeah, you want to join forces or whatever. It's like, no, you're just going to cause more problems for me. She's just like, I just want to stick to my own situation. I don't bother anybody. Nobody bothers me, which begs the question. I'm curious what her power is exactly. I don't know, get the feeling like she must have something decent enough for people not to mess with her. Not unless it's under that whole situation of like the top lady. That's one of her people, so it's kind of like, yeah, you don't mess with her in general anyway. But whether it's her power or just her working under that lady, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But I wonder, will the whole situation with Lorna kind of standing up for herself, will that kind of convince her to kind of work with her or not? Like I said, I get the feeling like the whole Lorna situation and Reed's situation are going to be kind of connected, where it's like, oh, they're going to allow them to escape, and they're going to meet up with Reed, and they're all going to try and make their way back to the mutant underground, and that's going to turn into a whole situation of like, oh, like I said, the whole thing being a trap and a setup by Reed, as well as, the Sentinel service. I don't know, we'll just, like I said, all of this is 100% speculation. We will just have to wait and see what goes on in the next episode. I'm super excited to see what goes down. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.